So mindfulness, the simple definition of mindfulness is basically paying attention to what's happening in the here and now. It's literally paying attention to your mind. And we'll talk about why that matters in a second. But basically, it's one of those things that it's like, it sounds so easy that we should do it all the time, but we just don't. And there's all different kinds of reasons for that. We're all busy, we're all stressed, we've got a million things to do, and sometimes it can sound a little bit like scary or maybe a little bit new age and a little bit, not for me. But mindfulness isn't anything big or fancy or complicated. It's just a way, it's a routine of thinking. Okay. So we can define mindfulness as just paying attention to our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, as well as the feelings, emotions, and thoughts of others. It takes time. Like it's something that requires conscious effort. And as humans, as a species, we're kind of a little bit lazy and we do like to take shortcuts. So it's easy to not do it. And in most situations, most people react the way they do, whether it's your colleagues or your clients or your public call in, because it's easy to just not be mindful. But also, problem is as well, is because that people don't always know what it means, how to do it, and more importantly, why it matters. So forgive me for going a little bit into this sort of scientifical, but I'm going to go a little bit into biology here and just talk about how mindfulness is kind of grounded by and explained by the way the brain works. So the brain is a super duper complex organ, as you can imagine. And there are two main parts that are at work when we are in a situation where things are happening. We've got information coming from the senses. It needs to be processed, and then it needs to have a decision made on how best to proceed. And those two parts are here and here. So this amygdala is part of what we call the primitive brain. It's called the limbic system. And this is a part of our brain that we share with many other animals. It's very, very primitive, and it's based on, or it's kind of like a leftover from our evolution. It's concerned with processes that basically keep us alive. Okay. So the amygdala is kind of involved in processing and deciding on responses in very primitive, life-threatening situations. So when something happens to you, the amygdala isn't intelligent enough. It can't process whether this is an actual thing that might kill you or just something that's a bit stressful. So if, let's say, you're scared of spiders and you see a spider, some people can be so phobic about stuff like being outside or being on a plane or spiders that their amygdala can genuinely trick the brain into thinking this thing is going to kill you. And you get the fight, the flight, or the freeze response, as if you were literally being chased by a tiger. There's no distinction in the brain between those two kind of events. The prefrontal cortex, this bit that's higher up, this kind of appeared in our brains a bit later. It emerged in our brains more recently in history. And the prefrontal cortex, if I could say it properly, this is the part of our brain that processes all of the things coming in. And if they get past the amygdala, it allows us to think and be rational, make decisions, take decisions that are based on logic and reasoning and the higher order skills that humans have. The problem is, in a situation that's maybe like fast moving or stressful, the amygdala can actually prevent signals from getting to that rational higher part of the brain. So even though it's possible that this thing isn't going to kill you, let's say you've got a bad call with a customer and it's going really off and they're being super aggressive and super mean and nasty, that thing isn't going to kill you or the call handler that's dealing with this person. But if the amygdala decides that it's going to, it will block that signal from getting to the prefrontal cortex. And what you end up with is a fight, flight, or freeze response. So either what's going to happen is you're going to explode by fighting, you're just going to seize up, you're going to freeze, or you're going to just run away. And that could be like literally running to the toilet, running away crying, leaving the situation, and all that kind of stuff that we have to deal with when people I guess, overreact, but it's simply because they don't know how to not just give it some time and let that information get past the amygdala and get into the part of the brain where we can process it. So it's just another simple kind of flow chart here. So anytime information comes in, and usually it's visual or auditory in the kind of work we do, if the amygdala detects this is something that's very, very stressful, it doesn't matter if it's life-threatening or not, you will have a fight, flight, or a freeze response. If you are mindful, if you take the time to listen and think about what is happening in that moment and give your brain the chance to let those signals come through and go to the front parts of the brain on the left and the right side, what you'll end up with is a balanced and a rational response. And this is why mindfulness kind of matters, and the how we do it we'll talk about in a second, because there's all different ways to talk about mindfulness. There's mindfulness, the meditation side, that there's like a deliberate practice of being mindful that you can do each day, and there's things you can do. But mindfulness can also be about just responding in a mindful way, not trying to respond to situations immediately with your basic instinctual responses, because ordinarily that will lead to this fight, flight, or freeze response. So being mindful is very, very connected to situations that you find yourself in and how you're going to respond in those situations. As part of my role, I am developing a whole range of workshops that can be completely like bespoke to your needs, or we can have like an off-the-shelf solution. So we've got a new section of our website now where you can go and look at some workshops that we've got. And we, this is what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about working with people, and just making a difference in whatever way that I can. So if you've got anyone either in your own in your own business, or any colleagues that you think might benefit from some online or in-person kind of training, please let me know, and I'm happy to have a conversation